So what we're gonna do right now, or what I'm gonna show you is I'm gonna show you how to make this really cute, so cute, little, it's called a tripod mug. And this is the warm up for this week's assignment where we're gonna be making mugs. This is just gonna teach you how to roll a slab out so that you have some practice for that when you get started on your big one. So I've got just this little piece of clay. Okay, it's not a big chunk. Little piece of clay. We're gonna make these pretty small. And then I've got some other things here too. This is a rock. This is sagebrush. And I have a wood tool, which would represent your popsicle stick that you have in your tool tub. So those are the only things I have for the project. What I want you guys to practice is I want you to practice rolling out this chunk of clay so it's a nice rectangle. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna smash this so it's a little bit flat. You never want to try to roll something out when it's just a thick chunk, right? So this is going to make it a little bit easier. It's just kind of flattening it with your hand. And I flip my clay over back and forth to make sure it's not sticking to my work surface. You guys have your wood board. Before you start doing this, I'd probably make sure it's pretty clean so that you don't get chunks of clay in your slab or whatever the case is. So now we're going to work on rolling out our slab. So just trying to make this nice and even. So I'm not going to push super hard on my little dowel, just enough to really slowly stretch my clay. So there's that. And I definitely want this to be a little bit longer. So I'm going to try to lengthen that just a little bit. Now, when we're working on slabs, and specifically for a mug, you don't want your clay to be super thin. Otherwise, it's just going to collapse and break, and that'll be really frustrating. Okay, so this is going to be my thickness. So you can kind of see, you know, I don't know, according to my finger, it's not as thick as my finger, so maybe half of that. So when you're trying to think about how thick to make your slab, this is good. Okay, too thin, it's gonna collapse. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna kind of trim this into a rectangle. And since this is practice, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you want it to be perfect, I'll show you some tips for that next week, but for this, or for later in the week, for this you could just use a straight edge like a ruler to make sure your slab is perfect. I like a little imperfection with my ceramics. So here's my extra clay. I'm gonna put that back into my bag. All right, before I turn this into the cutest cup you've ever seen, I'm gonna add texture. And you can play around with some different things. I was trying to find things that you would have at home. So this is maybe one idea, is taking sagebrush and rolling that into my clay just to try that. That looks really cool. Okay, so that's sagebrush. If you have leaves that are dropping outside, that would be another great idea, is rolling some leaves into your clay. We've watched lots of videos of people doing that and it looks really cool. Here's my lava rock. So maybe I just want to have some kind of general rock texture. So that's my rock texture. And another one of my personal favorites is stripes. So I could use my wood tool that I have just to come in and create some stripes. And now I've ended up with 3 different textures on this little cup, which is maybe a nice mix. So I've got these really organic, natural forms, and then I'll combine that with this kind of striped edge. Okay, so that's gonna be my slab I'm gonna use. It's gonna totally smash your slab. So if you end up with edges that are pretty uneven, I would probably just take a second to trim those back to be more square. Okay, looks pretty good. Kind of trying to shape it just a little bit. I think on mine, I think this will be the top. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna stand our slab up. So just kind of carefully work on shaping that into a cylinder. And where these 2 edges overlap, we're gonna score and slip. So scratch those edges up as best as you can. A little bit of water. And smash those edges together. And then on the inside, I'm gonna just pull that clay together, top and bottom. So really to make sure that the inside is as smooth as you can make it right now before we close up the cylinder. Okay, so just work back and forth with your finger, or you can use your sponge if it'll fit in there. My cylinder's a little bit too small, so just put some water on your finger, maybe work on pulling that clay together so it really sticks. On the outside where your seam is, you want to make sure that that's really sealed as well. So kind of pull that clay back and forth over the seam so you can't see it. Okay, once you've gotten that as closed up as you can, you might find that you need to add a little bit more texture right there just to kind of hide the seam. So I think I could, I don't know, use my rock and just press a couple little extra texture chunks right there and right there just to kind of hide that. Okay, so now that seam is pretty hidden. If you're, you've got one side that's taller than the other, that's fine for this little tripod vessel. It's gonna look just fine. Okay, here's the fun. This is how we turn it into a tripod. A tripod means 3, and in this case, it's gonna be 3 legs. So you have a cylinder. You are going to slowly press this into a triangle. So that's step 1, make a triangle. And then with that triangle, you're just gonna continue to press, keep pressing all the way in until that triangle kind of closes up, just like that. Okay, so now what I've made is this tiny little pot that has 3 legs, or a tripod. Okay, so super adorable. This would be great for any number of things. It could be your new pencil holder. It could be for toothpicks, something like that. To finish it though, you need to seal up your legs. So down here on the bottom, I didn't score, slip, and seal anything, which is fine, but I am gonna use a little bit of water and really squish these legs together and make sure that they are not gonna come apart. So really working on sealing up the tripod. Another thing that I like to do is right here in the center, that tends to end up being a little bit of a hole. So you can take just a tiny bit of your clay and roll a ball or a sphere, smash it, make it a button, and then score, slip, and seal that little button onto this bottom spot of your clay. Okay, so that's gonna be this little disc at the bottom. Mine was too big, so I had to change it to be smaller. Okay, so that creates just this little button on the bottom instead of having kind of a hole. All right, around the top, in order to finish the top part, you want to smooth that out with a sponge, make sure that's nice and rounded so it looks finished, not just like you just cut it. And then the last thing I would do, kind of double check your legs where it was bending. It might have caused some cracks, so definitely smooth all of that out. These are all the craftsmanship things, so just looking at how well it's made, making sure everything looks as good as possible and it's not going to fall apart. The last thing I'm going to suggest, and I don't know how well you can see in there, down inside of my vessel, there are kind of some grooves where I did the tripod. So taking a wood tool, like your little popsicle stick, and trying to get down there and just seal that up. So again, it's not going to pop apart. Just something like that. You could also just dip your paintbrush in some water maybe and work on making sure that that is really connected on the inside so it's not going to crack when it dries. Okay, so you just want to make sure the inside of those legs is also as sealed as possible. All right, so now what we've done is we've made this little tiny tripod cup, and I love them without a handle, but if you wanted to add just a little handle, I'll show you that just really quickly, and that helps you practice that technique as well. So you're just gonna roll out your coil, and you should be an expert at rolling coils at this point because we spent all week last week doing that. So I'm gonna roll my coil, then I'm gonna use my kind of rolling pin to flatten that coil. And handles should never be super thin, okay? So it should definitely be at least the thickness of my cup, if not just a little thicker. Okay, so that's gonna become my handle. And cut that off, both ends. Use your sponge to really smooth it so your edges are nice and round. Okay, so this is my handle. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shape it into a curve, and you can do that just on your board. You can let it sit and firm up for a few minutes if you would like to, or you can go ahead and attach it. So for this, I think I'll attach it on the side. And so I'm gonna score where I'm gonna attach. So these two spots are gonna be my attachment points. Put some water on there. And then for my handle, this is how I do a handle. I'm gonna take the thick part, and that's gonna be the top. The top of my coil that I just flattened out, that's where I'm gonna put my score marks. Okay, we are not attaching blunt edges like this. Okay, that will fall off. So I need this part to be the attachment point. I'm going to bend it so that part that I just scored is now attached like that. Okay, so it's attached, not blunt ends, but curved. And then the bottom piece is gonna attach like so. Okay, so it creates kind of this interesting shape. It is not just a C. Okay, so I'm gonna squish that on there. The top, support it on the inside, squish the bottom part. It makes a really nice little thumbprint there, which you'll see on almost every pot if you start looking around at different potters. Most people have their thumbprint at the bottom. And then at the top, on the inside of this, I just work on kind of attaching that really well, so just kind of smoothing out the bottom of my handle. That helps make sure it's not gonna fall off. Adjust your curve just a little bit. And then you wanna let this dry upside down. So it's gonna sit like that. I would put it hanging off the edge of my board so that my handle right here doesn't get knocked off. Okay, once it's firm, once it's kind of leather hard, then you can flip it back right side up. Okay, otherwise if I left it sitting like this, the weight of the handle is gonna pull it off. Okay, so we wanna let that sit upside down to dry. All right, so that's your little tutorial, fun little project. And again, once you're done making this one, you can decide to save it or recycle it, but I think you're gonna find they're so adorable that you are gonna wanna keep this for the rest of your life. Okay, have fun. That's your warm-up project. This is very small. Okay, this is maybe 3 inches tall, and just a fun little way to get started rolling slabs and adding textures. All right, happy week 5 of distance learning. I hope you guys are loving ceramics, and let me know if there's any questions that I can help you with. All right, thanks.